Hi, this is Mark Eisen. To commemorate the 20th anniversary of 9/11, I wanted to share for the first time my personal experience in Manhattan that day and my experiences in the days following the disaster. It's a story about how I found a way to deal with the trauma through music by writing the song Stronger. The song is a tribute to all of those whose lives were lost, a tribute to all of the heroes, fallen and living. And hopefully, it's a song that brings comfort to all of those who were affected by the tragedy. Here is my story, which is also the story of Stronger.
The beauty of the dream of freedom and of peace.
I lived across from the World Trade Center, and I worked in Manhattan on 33rd Street and Park Avenue at an Alpha Graphics, where I was the store manager.
Can never be erased and will never be replaced.
On September 10th, the night before, I was called by my client, who was Northeastern Capital on the 79th floor, I believe, of the World Trade Center. And they called me to change my appointment from 8:30 a.m. to probably around 9:30 a.m. because they were going to meet at a Starbucks outside across the street from the World Trade Center.
Like the memories of you, still frozen in my mind.
So the next day, September 11th, it was around 8:45 a.m. when I exited the train station. It was a train station in Manhattan Mall, which is around 33rd Street and 6th Avenue, that area. And I exited the train, and as I normally did, I looked south down 6th Avenue. And the Twin Towers were always there, standing in their powerful, shining glory. And I always looked down there every single day that I exited that station, because I was always marveling at their architecture and how strong and powerful they looked. And this day was a little bit different because maybe it was around 8:46. And when I looked south, instead of seeing the pristine towers, those big squares into the sky, I saw a fireball exiting the North Tower and billowing gray-black smoke. So I immediately thought it was a bomb. It was too big to be like just a gas leak or something crazy like that. Now, I didn't see the first plane enter, or I think I would have probably fallen to the ground. I must have just caught after impact, but if I would have seen a plane go in there, oh God, I don't know. Anyway, it's hard for me to talk about this.
We know within our hearts that your lives will set us free.
And I immediately, after getting over the disbelief and shock of seeing that, I immediately remembered that I was supposed to be there. That just last night, my appointment changed. And then I started to feel this weird rush of thank God, and then guilt. And thank God and guilt, and this back and forth in my brain that how could I have been spared, and all those people down there, they weren't. And at that point, we didn't know how many people had died. We imagined the worst, but hoped for the best, I think, right from the beginning. But I decided to go to Alpha Graphics anyway and see how everyone was, if everyone got to work, or what was going to be the plan for the day. And I just went there in shock. I mean, obviously I was in shock. So I can't remember much about it other than we got a battery powered radio, turned it on to listen. And then we discovered that kitty corner across the street, the owner had put up a television in the window and speakers. And so everyone was gathering in the street, kitty corner, and they were watching through these windows, and the door was open to hear the sound. And we basically, some of us walked over there and just kind of stood in the street watching, everything unfolding to the south of us. And it started to become surreal in that people were just walking north. They were just walking away from downtown, past us, but in an eerie, calm silence. Nobody was running or rushing. People were barely talking. At least that's how I remember it. And there was some chatter amongst us watching the TVs, but very hushed, very respectful. And I started to realize that there were no sirens, no police, no ambulances, no taxis, no traffic, no trucks. Suddenly, it was like we were in another planet. Like, this is not New York City. This is not Manhattan. And everything started to become more and more unreal and surreal. And we stood there in disbelief as we saw the other plane hit the South Tower. Now, at that moment, we knew it was terrorism, and suddenly all of our freedom, all of our feelings of safety and security, they just vanished. Suddenly, you just weren't safe anymore. And, wow, this is tough. So I became concerned because of the amount of burning the building was doing and how the second plane impacted at an angle and seemed to go through almost the entire building. And then another huge fireball. I started to be very concerned that the towers were going to collapse. And I just remember kind of stating it in front of everybody, and everybody telling me that I was crazy, that there's no way, they're too strong, they're built to withstand this. And as they're arguing with me, one of the towers collapsed.
We will never be the same. We must never be the same. We will be.
Then, some minutes later, an hour or less, I don't know. Time is a construct that didn't really apply that day. The other tower collapses.
People are jumping now.
Oh my God!
Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! I told you! Oh my God! All these people! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!
At that moment, we heard that they were closing Manhattan and that they were only allowing foot traffic.
Taking pride in this our land, we will be stronger.
I was with John Carlos, and we decided to go south against all the other traffic walking north to a bar where one of his friends, who I was also very close with, Mariana, she was the manager of this bar, and she lived above the bar. And so we knew at least we'd have a place to stay, even though it was closer to the World Trade Center, and we thought there would be more smoke and contamination. That seemed to be our only option at that moment, so we went there.
In all we do, in what in who we are in every way.
We waited some hours and we heard that boats were taking people across the Hudson River to New Jersey. And I had been trying to reach my clients. I had been trying to reach a friend, Patricia, who worked in Windows on the World up at the top of the World Trade Center, and cell phones weren't working. You know, I couldn't reach my family. It was just a lot of the cell phone towers went down with the buildings. John Carlos convinced me to walk to the shore and try to take a boat, and we waited and waited, and finally a small boat was already carrying some people, but I'm not sure if they were already passed. They were already dead, but they weren't moving. And then there were other people being loaded onto the small boat that were injured, cut mostly, but some bruised and concussions and things like that. And we got in the boat and we were going across the river, and the smoke from the World Trade Center, basically as the winds shifted, came across the water at us, and it became completely obscured. You couldn't see anything. And I thought, oh my God, this boat doesn't have navigation. What if we choke or die right on this river? Like I'm now entering the disaster again. Like that's what it felt like. It was like a Hollywood disaster movie, seriously. And after, I don't know what seemed like hours, but it was probably minutes, we did reach the other side, and the smoke was more in the center of the river. And again, I was thankful, and again, I was guilty.
We'll hold you in our hearts and pray for you each day.
I couldn't leave the apartment we were staying in. The view from the apartment was the disaster site across the river, and smoke and burning was happening for weeks and months afterwards. Even when you went into Manhattan, there was sometimes that smell of burning rubber or electrical cords or electrical burning smell. It was awful. And it was for months and months, maybe 5 or 6 months. You could smell it. And it was just a constant reminder of the death and destruction. And during that time, I felt like we had lost some of our liberties. We certainly felt like we lost some of our freedoms with what was going on in airports all over and security and everything. But some of that was making me feel more secure, but some of that was making me angry too. Although, if I can look at a good thing, I tried to find the positive, and I saw people coming together. I saw people respecting each other. I saw the United States united.
More united we will stand. We will be stronger, taking pride in this our land.
So when I finally got to the point where I could leave the apartment, I was still, crying all the time, and I was a mess. And I still didn't go back to work, but I finally decided to take the train from New Jersey into Manhattan. And I had a very specific goal in mind, and that was to go to my favorite diner, Johnny Rockets. And I wanted to go there to prove to myself that I could get back to life. And I, went through the stress of the train and everything was okay. And then I walked eerily to the Johnny Rockets, and there were some people there, but it was pretty empty. And one of the normal waitresses knew me and immediately put in my order, apparently. And as I was sitting there with the napkins, I grabbed my pen. And I remember thinking in my brain, like, how do I get better about this? Like, what do I do? Like, how do I solve this trauma? And I never thought about therapy, but I should have had therapy then. But I didn't know what to do. And I was a singer and a songwriter. I couldn't even think about singing. I couldn't think about music. Like, it just didn't make sense to me. Nothing made sense but family and friends. That's all I could think about. But I was sitting there, and I don't know what happened or how it came out of me, but I wrote down the words, "In every candle burns a flame. In every flyer shines a name."
In every candle burns a flame, in every flyer shines a name.
And this was because everywhere I walked, I saw like these shrines and these walls and fences that were loaded with all of these flyers of all of these missing people. And there were candles burning, and their names were like fluttering in the wind and were illuminated by the candlelight. And I wrote down those words, and, the songwriter in me looked and immediately said, "Oh, that's beautiful. I like that. Like, keep going." But the other part of me was like, ugh, how can I do this? I can't write a song. And then I thought, well, it could be a dedication. Maybe I can help raise money for the Red Cross or for the disaster relief funds. So that thought motivated me, and I continued to write through my chili cheese fries, through the burger. I sat there emotional and crying, writing about 75% of Stronger.
On every single face, a story yet untold. How can we ever believe how many hearts were made to grieve?
And the chorus and the word "stronger," the first line I wrote was, "We will be stronger, more united we will stand." That was the first phrase after those first two. And I found out that that was the chorus, and that the song just became the name Stronger. And I thought, this is a good message. This is what I want to say. I want to say that you did this to us, you terrorists. You did this to us, but guess what?
We will be stronger.
Because of what you did, we're more united. And that we're going to have more resolve. And we're going to be even better people because of all those lives that were lost and because of all of those heroes that we lost. And not only the ones we lost, the ones that were injured, and the cancers that came afterwards, and the loss of property, and people losing all of their possessions. And, the tragedy touched a lot of people. And even throughout the world, there was some solidarity. So that was maybe the good that came out of it. But we mustn't forget. And that's why I wanted to do this video, to talk about the experience and to talk about the song. And I hope that you really focus on the words, because that was the experience that many of us lived through in Manhattan. And I don't like losing a lot of the civil liberties and the freedoms that we had. I don't like all the hassles at the airport. But you know what? I feel safer because of it. So with the bad sometimes comes the good. And I hope that this song gives you some hope and inspiration. And for those of you who have suffered any loss from any kind of tragedy that's brought on by terrorism or even domestic terrorism, I hope that you can find some comfort knowing that your loved one didn't die in vain, that everything that happens needs to make us stronger, and we need to be reminded of it so that we don't forget. Never forget.
In all we do, in what we say, in who we are, in every way.
When I went back to the apartment in New Jersey, I couldn't really face finishing it for the next few days. But as I started to remember why I started it in the first place, that it was coming from me. I needed to deliver it. It was bothering me. And although I felt weird about it, I thought, this could bring comfort to someone, or maybe I could help raise money with the song. So I decided to sit down at my keyboard and started to sort of try to let the inspiration happen. And I started to complete the lyrics, and I started to develop the melody, and I wanted it to be a little sad, but I wanted it to be hopeful. So I put a sort of a heartbeat drum beat in there as the hope and as the life, the ones that carry on, right? And it started to come together. The version that you're hearing right now was missing some strings and some ornamentation, and yes, it wasn't fully done, but this was like the first version. And then once I was happy with the full set of lyrics, I added some strings, some additional drums and percussion, and then it became what is now Stronger. I went home, this was a couple months after the disaster, to visit my family. My niece, Stephanie, happened to be in contact with the radio station, and she let them know that her uncle had lived in Manhattan, kind of lived through the disaster, so to speak.
We've got a special little song here that I promised I would play.
Is this a local artist?
It's
or?
I think it's a local
No,
artist.
he's from here, but he lives in New York.
Okay, he's from here. He lives in New York, and he's related to Stephanie Mishaw somehow.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a
let's
tribute song.
Uncle, let's see. It's her uncle, Barry Lippold, although his stage name is Mark Eisen. Mark Eisen.
That was good change.
And he put a little song together about the.
Kind of hard to say. Everybody, put your hands together for Barry Lippold. What?
Yeah, Mark Eisen's a little easier to
exactly.
say. But anyway, put a little song together dealing with the September 11th attacks. Song is dedicated to the countless heroes in America who have made us all stronger. This is his writing now. To all of the families whose lives were tragically altered by the events of September 11, 2001, your loss is felt and shared by all of us. Be strong.
What kind of music does Barry normally do?
I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know anything about the guy.
All right.
Here's Mark Eisen.
will set us free.
106.3 FM WMXG with Mark Eisen, ladies and gentlemen.
A.K.A. Barry Lippold.
Barry Lippold. Well, actually, it's Barry Lippold, a.k.a. Mark Eisen. Nice song. Nice song. He's originally from here himself.
Barry is.
Yeah, in fact, he's in town right now, apparently.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, very nice.
Maybe we get him to pop in later.
Yeah. What time do you come on the air?
1
o'clock. Maybe we can get him in during your shift.
Okay.
We can do a little interviewing.
They're a little lighthearted about it, which at the time bothered me a little. But, you know, people were trying to get back to normal as much as they could by this time, which was a few months later.
Looking to the future, we're unclear in what we see, but we know within our hearts that your lives will set us free.
Then I decided to create a basic video for YouTube with the song. And I uploaded the song, and it was actually noticed by the New York Times, and they put it in their 10th year anniversary, which I was surprised 10 years later that it got some notice. But it played on their site, and it played from my channel at the time. And then last year during COVID, I decided to revisit and remake the video and remaster the song. I hope that it brings comfort. That's why I did it. And it made me feel better, but it's still very painful. And I've only sung it live 2 times. And both times I broke down crying. So it's probably not a song I would typically do live. I want to thank you all for coming on this journey with me. I hope that you never forget and that we always stay united. Now, the remastered new version of Stronger.
The beauty of the dream of freedom and of peace can never be erased and will never be replaced, like the memories of you still frozen in my mind. We will never be the same. We must never be the same. We will be stronger, more united we will stand. We will be stronger, taking pride in this our land. We will be stronger in all we do, in what we say, in who we are, in every way. We'll hold you in our hearts and pray for you each day. In every candle burns a flame, in every flyer shines a name, on every single face, a story yet untold. How can we ever believe how many hearts were made to grieve? We will be stronger, more united we will stand. We will be stronger, taking pride in this our land. We will be stronger in all we do, in what we say, in who we are, in every way. Looking to the future, we're unclear in what we see, but we know within our hearts that your lives will set us free. How stronger, more united we will stand. We will be stronger, taking pride in this our land. We will be stronger in all we do, in what we say, in who we are, in every way. that your lives will set us free.